Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we are back with part 5, and we'll continue our discussion of the supply curve. And let's go ahead and go on to the next. And we're talking about how the supply curve shifts. In the previous part, we talked about how it would shift to the left, where less would be supplied at every price. Now we'll look at how the supply curve would shift to the right, with more supplied at every price. Okay. Again, if there were a sudden increase in the number of suppliers, then that would cause the supply curve to shift to the right. There would be more supplied at every price. And an example of that might be a business where there's so much demand for that product that all the producers are making a very good profit. So other entrepreneurs might decide to go into that business themselves, and again would be adding to the supply, so more would be supplied at every price. If there was a decrease in the price of an input, we used the example a few minutes ago about the price of fertilizer going up. Well, if the price of fertilizer went down a whole lot, then more would be supplied at every price because the cost of production would be less. Therefore, you could have more coffee beans at every price. If there was an improvement in technology, let's say that traditionally coffee beans are picked by hand, and somebody invents the perfect machine that can go down the row of coffee plants and can pick just the ripe beans just right, and do it better than a person can do it. Now the labor cost per pound of coffee is going to go down dramatically. So therefore we have improved technology with lower costs, and we will have more supplied at every price. Okay. If there is a change in expectations of the suppliers, let's say they expect things to be economically better, and they think that they are going to be able to sell a lot more coffee, they'll start gearing up in advance, planting more coffee plants, and therefore providing more supply at every price. Okay. And if there is a decrease in the price of that related product, we used the example of gasoline and heating oil a few minutes ago. If that price of heating oil went down dramatically, then in all likelihood the producers of gasoline would be refining more crude oil to make gasoline rather than heating oil. Okay. The same thing would be true for our coffee growers. If the demand for a related product that the coffee growers could grow on the same land suddenly decreased dramatically, say because of the actions of the Drug Enforcement Agency, then in all likelihood they would be providing more coffee beans at every price. Okay. Well, now that we've talked about supply, let's see how the two supply and demand interrelate. Okay. What we end up doing is we plot them onto the same graph, if you will. So we superimpose one curve over the other. Okay. And what we can tell immediately is that the lines do cross at a certain point. We call that point the equilibrium point. Okay. And we see here that at $5 a pound, that suppliers will wish to supply 6 million pounds of coffee, and the consumers will wish to demand 6 million pounds of coffee, okay, so that the market will be cleared. Every supplier who is willing to supply coffee at $5 a pound will have every pound of coffee that they supply demanded by consumers who want to buy coffee at $5 a pound. Okay? And consumers will find that they will find a willing supplier willing to supply them with as much coffee as they want to buy at $5 a pound. So therefore the market is efficient at the equilibrium point, and the market will be cleared. There will be no shortage of coffee beans. There will be no surplus of coffee beans. Okay? So that's what's important about equilibrium. And again, in economics, anytime you see a curve where two lines cross or two curves cross, that's the important point. Okay. Now, what would happen to a supplier if they wish to raise their prices above that equilibrium level. Okay? Now remember, we assume that all the suppliers know what everyone else is what they're doing. Everyone is charging the same price. All the consumers know immediately when one supplier does something different. Okay? So now if one supplier raises their price, what's going to happen basically is no one's going to buy from them, and they're not going to sell anything. So therefore there is very little encouragement for them to raise their price. The flip side, if they were to lower their price, okay, and let's say here they lower their price to $3 a pound, okay, from the equilibrium level of $5 a pound, well, what's going to happen is they'll still sell all the coffee they want to sell. That's not the problem. The problem is they could have sold that same amount of coffee for $5 a pound. Okay? So therefore they would be giving up $2 of profit for no reason. Okay? It is not a case of being able to capture more of the market. They can basically sell as much as they want to at that $5 a pound. So therefore there is no advantage in lowering their rate. It's very similar to that example that we had of the supermarket, where a person comes up to check out and they pick a line based on the length of the lines, and all the lines will have about the same number of people. There will be no advantage to somebody to move from one line to the other. The system will be in equilibrium. Okay? We'll continue that discussion in part 6 in a few minutes.